The Asante, also known as Ashanti in English, are part of the Akan ethnic group and are native to the Ashanti region of modern-day Ghana. Asantes are the last group to emerge out of the various Akan civilizations. Twi is spoken by over 9 million Asante people as their native language. The Asante people developed the Ashanti Empire along the Lake Volta and Gulf of Guinea. The empire was founded in 1670, and the capital Kumasi was founded in 1680 by Asantehene Ose Kofi Tutu I on the advice of Okomfo Anokye, his premier. Sited at the crossroads of the trans-Saharan trade, Kumasi's strategic location contributed significantly to its growth. Over time, a number of peculiar factors have combined to transform the Kumasi metropolis into a financial center and political capital. The main causal factors included the unquestioning loyalty to the Asante rulers and the Kumasi metropolis' growing wealth, derived in part from the capital's lucrative domestic trade in items such as gold, slaves, and bullion. In this video, we will explore the fascinating connection between the Ashanti people of Africa and the Hebrew Israelites. In this thought-provoking video, we delve into the history and cultural practices of the Ashanti people, examining the similarities and differences between their traditions and those of the Hebrew Israelites. From their ancestral roots to their spiritual beliefs, we ask the question, are the Ashanti people of Africa truly Hebrew Israelites? Join us as we uncover the intriguing answers and shed light on this captivating topic. This video explores the fascinating connection between the Ashanti people of Africa and the Hebrew Israelites. In this thought-provoking video, we delve into the history and cultural practices of the Ashanti people, examining the similarities and differences between their traditions and those of the Hebrew Israelites. From their ancestral roots to their spiritual beliefs, we ask the question, are the Ashanti people of Africa truly Hebrew Israelites? Join us as we uncover the intriguing answers and shed light on this captivating topic. The following are excerpts from the book Hebrewisms of West Africa by Joseph J. Williams. Now, as Gardner observes, even today in Jamaica, the descendants of the old slaves retain a practice that the room in which a person dies should not be swept or disturbed for 9 days. Water and other requisites are placed in it, and as among the Jews, a light is kept burning during the prescribed period. Gardner, however, is in error when he positively asserts that this practice is not of African origin. As a matter of fact, Hebrewisms of African derivation are not confined to Jamaica among the West Indian islands. Blair Niles, in her recent delightful little volume, Black Haiti, speaking of the slaves from Africa, positively asserts, some were said to be descendants of Jews mixed with Negroes. It is interesting, then, to find Sir Harry Johnston insisting, the Elamites of Mesopotamia appear to have been a Negroid people with kinky hair, and to have transmitted this racial type to the Jews and Syrians, and further noting, the Jewish hybrids with the Negro in Jamaica and Guyana reproduce most strikingly the Assyrian type. Whatever we may think of this author's claim of a Negro element in the ancient Hebrews, his attitude will make less shocking our present endeavor to show an infiltration of the same Hebrew stock in the evolving of certain distinctively Negro tribes in Africa. You know, it is surprising, too, to find a Mississippi Negro attributing to the Jews the custom so prevalent in West Africa as well as in Jamaica in the slave days, of putting food and money in the coffin with the dead so that he can eat and buy things when he gets to heaven. The supreme being among the Ashanti is Nyankopon, whom has been identified with the Hebrew Yahweh. His primary title is Nyankopon, meaning Nyarai, alone, great one. Akompong, then, appears to be the white man's effort to express the spoken Nyankopon as heard from the early slaves. When the slave trade was at its height, two Negro nations shared the mastery of West Africa, the Ashanti and the Dahomeyans, and wherever the slaves of either tribe predominated, there we find the special forms of superstitions and witchcraft which were peculiar to that people. Thus in Cuba, San Domingo, Louisiana, and so on, where the Dahomeyans' voodooism, ascendancy, the ophiolatry of voodooism became prevalent. In Jamaica, on the other hand, voodooism is practically unknown, while obeah with its concomitant poisonings has been rife since the earliest days. Later, while criticizing a map that had been published by T. Edward Bowditch in 1819, he says, beginning then at the top of the map, I find a place called Yahudi, a country or town of non-existence. Yahudi simply implies Jews, the tribes of Jews, and so on, which term the Muslims apply to those people of the Mosaic faith who inhabit the lower Atlas and the districts of Sus. They also apply the term Yahudi to the Hebrew or Jewish tribes, whether native Africans or not, who inhabit Maroa, some parts of Philani, and the neighborhood of Timbuktu. Of these people I imagine the author of the information spoke, when he endeavored to make Mr. Bowditch comprehend the import of the word Yahudi. As a nation or a tribe, they cannot be inserted with propriety in any map, for they exist even in a more deplorable state of servitude and humiliation in those districts than in the Empire of Morocco. In the present instance, however, Bowditch would appear to have the better claim for credibility, as only 6 years after the publication of Dupuy's criticism, it was emphatically refuted by two travelers who actually passed along the Niger and entered in their journal, under date of Wednesday, July 7th, 1830. Yahuri, spelled Yahoorie, is a large, flourishing, and united kingdom. It is bounded on the east by Hausa, on the west by Borgu, on the north by Kubi, and on the south by the kingdom of Nufi. But let us return to Dupuy's narrative, where we read, the Jews of Sudan are, according to my informers, divided into many large and small tribes, with whose names they are unacquainted. Their mode of life in some countries is pastoral, but the towns are filled with traders and artificers of that faith, who gain a subsistence at their several employments in the service of the Moslems, under whose government they live as vassals. This, in reference to Mr. Bowditch's kingdom of Yehudi, I may be permitted to say, is the only state of society in which that oppressed nation is suffered to live, and the tribes, without security in their possessions, without public revenues or arms, are hourly exposed to insult and rapine from the blind zeal and active bigotry by which their lords are animated in these countries. The lands occupied by these people cover a wide extent between Messina and Kabi. They are said to be mingled also with the Upper Faulaha tribes, eastward of Timbuktu, and in many parts of Maroa they have inheritances or are employed as artificers in the cities and towns. As we live among the heathens, said Bashaw, so do the Jews in Maroa and Philani with our brethren. But they are not esteemed like us, for they are a people hardened in their sins and obstinate in infidelity. The anger of God is upon them, and therefore are they given to the rule of the Moslems until they shall become incorporated with the faithful. The tribes are not black, but of a color resembling the Arabs of the north. But what is more material, these Sudanic Jews are reported to have been the original inhabitants thereabout, after the Arabs were acquainted with Central Africa. Whence came these Jews, and what influence did they exert, if any, upon the Ashanti in bygone days? So reference should be made to one or two writers of the Middle Ages who were familiar with the history of the Sudanese Jews. For example, there is an Arabic manuscript from the 12th century, and the author is usually referred to as Idrisi. Speaking of Lamlam, from where slaves were dragged into captivity by the inhabitants of Ghana, Takur, and so on, he states that there were only 2 towns in this district, which he places to the south of the kingdom of Ghana. And Idrisi adds, according to what the people of this country report, the inhabitants are Jews, but for the most part they are plunged in impiety and ignorance. When they have reached the age of puberty, they brand the countenance, or at least the temples, with fire. These are marks that serve to identify them. All the dwellings in their countries are built on the banks of a river which flows into the Nile. Referring to Ghana as the most populous and the leading commercial city in Negro land, the same author asserts that its king possesses on the banks of the Nile, or Niger, a solidly constructed castle, well fortified, and the interior of which is decorated with sculptures and paintings and the windows glassed. This castle was built in the year 510 of the Hijra, that's 1116 of the Christian era. Haji al-Agwadi, writing in 1242, adds this testimony. There is a race of people in Tugurt called Mejaharia, who occupy one separate quarter of the town. They were Jews in former times, but to escape death, with which they were menaced by the natives, they made profession of Islam, and are now constant readers of the Quran, which they commit to memory. They are still distinguished by the complexion peculiar to the Jews, and their houses, like those of that nation, emit an offensive smell. They do not intermarry with the Arabs, and it rarely happens that an Arab takes a wife from among the Mejaharia. The governor of Tugurt selects from among these people his scribes and bookkeepers, but they are never admitted to the dignity of Qadi or Imam. They have mosques in their quarter of the town, and they pray at the stated hours, except on the day of Jamat, Friday, which they do not observe as a Sabbath. They possess great wealth. Their women appear in the marketplaces veiled, and converse in Hebrew among themselves when they wish not to be understood.
Did you know that some scholars believe there are striking similarities between the Ashanti culture and ancient Israelite traditions, including shared practices in music and storytelling? The idea that the Ashanti people, an ethnic group from Ghana, might have roots connected to Hebrew Israelites is a topic that has sparked interest and debate. This connection isn't just about tracing ancestry, it's also about understanding the cultural practices, traditions, and histories that might link these two seemingly distinct groups. Exploring this topic can offer insights into how cultures evolve, interact, and sometimes, remarkably, share commonalities. Many people might be skeptical about the claim that Ashanti people are Hebrew Israelites, and rightly so. The notion often faces misconceptions and controversy. One common misconception is that suggesting a link between Ashanti and Hebrew cultures implies a direct, unbroken lineage, which isn't necessarily the case. Another misconception is that this idea is based solely on speculative claims without substantial evidence. The controversies surrounding this topic often stem from misunderstandings about cultural identity and the complexities of historical research. The debate also touches on issues of cultural appropriation and the dilution of traditional practices. Some argue that attempting to link Ashanti culture with Hebrew Israelite traditions could be seen as appropriating or misinterpreting historical narratives. However, proponents of the connection argue that shared human experiences and migrations could naturally lead to similarities between cultures. When delving into the historical, cultural, and linguistic evidence, several points stand out. Historically, both the Ashanti and ancient Israelites placed a significant emphasis on community, leadership, and spiritual practices. Culturally, the use of symbolic artifacts and the importance of oral traditions are notable. Linguistically, while the Ashanti speak a Niger-Congo language, there are scholars who have attempted to find etymological links between certain Ashanti words in Hebrew. Despite these connections, there's also considerable evidence that challenges a direct link. The geographical and historical contexts of the Ashanti and Israelites are vastly different, with the Ashanti being a more recent formation as a distinct ethnic group. Moreover, genetic studies have not conclusively supported a direct lineage from Hebrew Israelites to the Ashanti. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence often cited by proponents of the connection is the shared symbolic and spiritual practices. For example, both cultures place a high value on the concept of community and shared ancestry. The Ashanti have their sunsum or soul, similar to the Hebrew concept of nefesh or soul. These similarities are intriguing and invite a deeper exploration of cultural exchanges and shared human heritage. The debate over the Ashanti people's connection to Hebrew Israelites underscores the complexity of cultural identities and the fluidity of human history. It's clear that both Ashanti and Hebrew cultures have rich traditions and histories that are worth exploring. While the direct link between them remains a topic of debate, understanding these discussions can enrich our appreciation of global cultures. So, what do you think about the heritage of the Ashanti people? Have you come across any interesting connections between different cultures? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you're interested in more videos about cultural identities and their connections, check out another video on our channel where we explore the African roots of ancient civilizations.